I just found out that my boyfriend is into lolicon. I'm scared to confront him. I just found out my boyfriend is into lolis. We both have a shared interest in anime, but I always noticed that the female characters he liked had a cutesy, innocent charm to them. They had big honkers and butts, so I chalked it up to slightly off-putting, but because they were adults it was fine. Last night he let me look at his Instagram with him on my chest. There was so much adult films of small girl characters, like actual kitties. It made me nauseous, especially when he was smiling and joking about, "Oh, now you know I'm a creep." When he realized I was uncomfortable was when he admitted it was gross and weird, but he didn't see anything wrong with it. We had a long, tense conversation about it, but he still didn't see why it was a big deal since it's just drawings. When I asked why he liked it, he said, "It's about the innocence of youth, the purity, the contradiction." He assured me that this didn't extend to real life since he has a 10-year-old sister and smaller nieces, and he condemns that kind of thing in people in the lolly community who are like that. I then told him that I was a victim as a kid, so hearing him explain why he liked looking at them being violated made me exceptionally nauseous, and he got really quiet, but didn't have a response to it. He said he would delete everything and not look at loli again because he values me over Jack material and doesn't want to make me uncomfortable. But he still believes there's nothing wrong with it. I think he made it clear that he would continue on if I didn't ask him to stop, or even if he broke up. I feel defeated in trying to change his mind because he's so rooted in the opinion that liking lolicon is harmless. My fiancé had a tantrum because I skipped his family dinner to see my dying sister. I got engaged to my partner of 7 years, Ray, in May. Both sides of our family were really happy about this, and we had a big family meal 2 weeks after getting engaged. His brother lives 250 miles away and couldn't get here for that meal, so we decided to have a meal just for his family in late June, when his brother would be back for the weekend. This weekend was arranged long before we got engaged, so he wasn't back just for the meal. Earlier this year, my sister Casey got a serious eye infection that very quickly turned into an ulcer, which scarred her cornea and left it at a high risk of a perforation. She needed a corneal graft, but her surgeon was away for 4 weeks, so she was going to have to wait until he got back to have it. However, her eye didn't hold, and it perforated the day I was supposed to be going to the family meal with Ray's brother. Kaisa's wife was at work and had her phone turned off, and our mom was away with our stepdad, so when Casey called me to let me know what was happening, I knew she would be at the hospital on her own. I immediately talked to my boss, and he let me go early so Casey wasn't on her own. I texted Ray to let him know what was going on, and he texted me back to send Kay his love and to remind me about the meal that night. I ignored the comment about the meal, as it was the last thing on my mind. Once I got to the hospital, I was taken back into a room where Casey was, to be greeted by 3 doctors and 2 nurses rushing around trying to help Casey. I was then informed that she needed to have an emergency operation to have her eye glued, or else she would lose it. The problem was that they didn't have a surgeon at that hospital that could do it, and she needed to go to another hospital an hour and a half away. They asked if she would need transportation, or if I could take her. I said I would take her. Once we got to the other hospital, we were told that she would be having the operation at 5:30 p.m. I knew then that I wouldn't make the dinner, and texted Ray to let him know. He flipped out and basically told me to leave Casey at the hospital and have her wife pick her up after the op was done. At this point, I still hadn't been able to get a hold of Caius's wife. I told him that wasn't going to happen, and that he was out of order to even ask me to do that. Unalived my baby, and my boyfriend's family hates me. Found out I was pregnant a month ago. I've been on birth control since I was 15, same pill. I'm enrolled in school, have a job, and an apartment in a city close to home. I have a cat too. Everything was perfect. 6 weeks ago, I missed my period. I waited 10 days and missed my period. This wasn't normal. I originally started the pill because of my irregular period. Did I miss a pill? I counted twice, 3 times, 4. No extras. I looked at the open pack I had for this month and the unopened one for next month. They weren't expired. They were exactly the same, down to the print of the expiration date. I fished the trash can for last month's empty package. Same thing. I couldn't stop thinking about it. On the way to class that morning, I grabbed 3 pregnancy tests from the campus bookstore. I've never taken a pregnancy test, but I've always heard the phrase, pee on a stick. So I opened all 3 and used them at the same time. I waited 3 minutes and washed my hands, grabbing each of the tests in a paper towel. All 3 of them were positive. I cried. I dry heaved. I wanted to pass out on the bathroom floor. I called my boyfriend and he was as excited as ever. I was panicking, saying we weren't ready for a baby, how I couldn't stay in school and work with a newborn, how I would lose everything. I'm not ready. I don't want children right now. He started to say how I was selfish and would just have to put my classes and whatnot on hold until the baby was old enough to go to daycare. That made me nauseous. I told him I was coming home and he met me there. He held me and cried, saying how happy he was. I felt so disgusted with myself for knowing I didn't want this baby after seeing him cry like that. I wanted to try and keep the baby for him. I thought about having the baby and just leaving him with it. I thought about disappearing and never having the baby. After a few days, I had to ask what he thought of me getting rid of the baby. He told me he would hate me. He would never speak to me again. He laid into me, going on and on about me being a baby K-er, how I was selfish, evil, and immature for even thinking something like that. We got into a huge argument from there and I made him leave. He broke my TV and my favorite vase. I cried for him for days, begging him to take me back. He said I would if I kept the baby. Needless to say, he didn't take me back. I spent every night after that drinking bottle after bottle of Jim Beam whiskey. I miscarried in the dead of the night on a Thursday. Thought I had a really bad stomach bug until I saw the blood in my toilet. My neighbor took me to the hospital where my now ex's sister works. He showed up with my mom, his mom, and his dad. While she half-hugged me, his mom and dad made comments about how I probably did this on purpose, considering I didn't want the baby anyway. I just kept my mouth shut. My mom asked if they were here to support me or their son, and if they weren't here for me, they should just leave. They started arguing, and eventually it got loud and security escorted everyone out. But not before my ex and his family could start shouting at the top of their lungs how I'm a baby cakier and I'm going to hell, and I'm in so much pain, I'm so tired, and I'm so angry everything had to come to this. I really loved him, and now I feel like I'm losing everybody because of this. Today I effed up by accidentally destroying my boyfriend's family. I accidentally revealed that my boyfriend's mom was cheating by pointing out the fact that his older siblings, who both had the blood type AB, could not have been biologically related to their own negative father. I was an 18-year-old female dating my 18-year-old boyfriend, Jacob, at the time, and his father, who was in his early 60s, was a mechanic, and his mom, mid-50s, was a stay-at-home mom. They were a pretty typical white suburban family in the South, and I had asked Jacob if they could meet me even though we had only been dating for a month. At the dinner, I met his mom, dad, older brother, older sister, and her newborn daughter. The dinner went well, and I was chatting about my volunteer work at my college's blood drive, to which his father explains that his doctor told him he was O negative and a universal blood donor. My boyfriend mentions he is also O, but his siblings casually mention they are both AB. I don't think anything of it because my boyfriend had mentioned that his mom was married once before and was widowed. The following conversation went like this. I said, "Oh, that's really cool. You're a really rare blood type. If you don't mind me asking, is your mom's blood type A and your dad's B, or your dad's A and mom's B?" The older sister goes, "What do you mean?" "He's O." Gesturing to my boyfriend's father, I go, "Oh, I know. I was just asking about your bio father. But of course, you don't have to answer if you don't want to." I notice his mom get really pale, and it was in that moment I realized I effed up. Today I effed up by accidentally destroying my boyfriend's family. The older brother goes, "What do you mean, bio father?" I just started profusely apologizing and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it." Then, Jacob's dad got real quiet and looking at his wife's face. He knew instantly. I look over to Jacob, who I think was starting to put the full picture of what was happening together. Jacob's dad asked, "Are you saying they're not my biological kids?" Because my wife swore up and down in marriage counseling that they were my kids and she would never cheat on me. Yeah, turns out she never had any kids from her previous marriage. Jacob's mom said, "I would never cheat on you. They are definitely your kids. Don't be ridiculous." Jacob's dad then turns to me and says, "Why do you think they're not my kids?" I try to excuse myself because it was very clear the cat was out of the bag, and with a quick Google search for my boyfriend, he starts cussing out his mom. She starts to sob and apologizes over and over again. And I am forced to explain 9th grade biology to his father about the fact that the only kids he could have produced were with a blood type, O, A, or B, but absolutely not AB. Jacob was the only one with the possibility of being his son. They all start screaming at one another. Jacob's older sister eventually leaves because her newborn is screaming too. His mom goes and locks herself in the bedroom. Jacob's older brother follows her screaming, asking who his real father is. My boyfriend is trying to figure out if his dad still wants to be their father. I eventually have a friend come pick me up. We broke up shortly after, but not after figuring out that none of the kids produced from the marriage were his, and they divorced soon after. My stepdad turned my family against me. So let me start this off by saying I apologize for how long this may be. My dad passed when I was 15. Him and my mom weren't all that close by that time, so while it hit me hard, she wasn't as fazed as you'd expect. I joined the military when I was 17, and in my first year out of the house, my mom remarried. I never really vibed with him, just had different personalities and such. He would often make snide remarks and tell me to man up about any inconvenience I'd be upset about. This led to spats between us, and I was often just as at fault as he was for these disagreements, so it never got too serious. I got medically discharged after a little under 5 years, and my mom and him said they'd be happy to have me back in the house. I told them it'd be brief, just until I got on my feet and got a job, and even offered to pay rent, to which they declined. About 3 days into being back home, my stepdad went alone with me, asked what he thought a fair rent would be. I was confused, but it was his house, so we came to an agreement, and I kept it from my mom, assuming he did not want her to know, as he never mentioned it around her. I never asked for anything from them, not out of spite. I just wanted to do things myself. He had a son from a previous marriage. Him and I didn't share many common interests or anything, but I never had any issues with him. I'd say we got along. The only thing is, he was given a lot from them. Paid for his schooling, paid for his car, paid for his living arrangements, through college, and even after. I was a little less than a year older than him. So he started college right after they married. Like I said, I didn't want or need the help, but it felt lame that he'd get all that assistance, and I was immediately asked for rent, but I digress. I moved out after 3 months, and not long after met a girl who I was crazy about, and we started dating. It was my first relationship, and I was over the moon the entire time. Like in that early relationship haze, but it was just constant. I was very nervous to bring her home. My mom and I were very close, and I always worried she'd be very judgmental of a girl I'd bring home. My worries ended up being unwarranted. They got along extremely well. My girlfriend does not have a family, really. Long story. So my mom and stepdad became like that for her. Her and my mom hit it off extremely well, to the point they were hanging out just the two of them at times. My stepdad turned my family against me, and it made me extremely happy. My stepdad even really liked her, and I felt it brought us closer together, which isn't something I felt I wanted until we were. His dad abandoned his family growing up, and he put himself through school and got a nice high-paying job all by himself, which I had immense respect in him for. About a year, and I knew this was the girl I was going to marry. I told my mom and stepdad, and they both seemed extremely happy. She was practically part of the family already. My mom gave me her engagement ring, my dad gave her, which she kept. The job I had didn't pay great, so I figured even if it wasn't the ring she'd always have, it'd be a great placeholder. When I proposed, my girlfriend told me it wasn't a placeholder, and she absolutely loved it. I was legitimately never happier in my life. We started wedding planning, and my mom and stepdad said they'd help take care of the finances. It was the first time they'd offered to help me financially, and it really meant a lot. Fast forward to about 3 months later, I get a call from my stepdad who said I needed to come over. Felt a bit ominous, but I went over there after work. When I got there, my mom, stepdad, stepbrother, and fiancé. I saw her on the couch, and could tell she had been crying. I immediately thought someone had died, and went to go sit next to her when my stepdad stopped me. He started hitting me with accusations of me cheating on her for our entire relationship. I was puzzled and told everyone there I don't even text any women I'm not related to besides her. Apparently, some girl had gotten my fiancé's number and told her that we were sleeping together for over a year now, but she didn't know I was in a committed relationship. She sent her screenshots of alleged conversations and knew stuff about me that a random person wouldn't know. I, like a fool, couldn't see what was happening in front of me. I was stunned, saddened, and furious. I begged her from across the room to look at my phone and see I'd never done any of that. Her and my mother were both weeping, and I started to cry. My stepdad called me every word he could think of and escorted me out of the house while telling me if he saw me on his property again, he'd call the police. I spent the next several weeks trying to contact them to no avail. Calls, texts, voicemails, every messaging app out there. Nothing. My stepdad turned my family against me. After those weeks, I got a call from my stepdad who told me to stop trying to contact her and that I was never welcome in his house or around his family again. I tried to call my mother over this time to no avail as well. After about a month, all I got from anyone was a text from my mother saying how sad and disappointed she was. My mom didn't really have much family, so they always spent holidays with my stepdad's side. They all shunned me as well. I saw their Christmas pictures on Facebook with my ex-fiancé present and seemingly in good spirits, which crushed me. The only family I had that would talk to me at all was my dad's brother and his family. Despite that even, they all seemed wary of me too. The only one that I think truly believed me was my uncle. I don't think I'd have made it without him, honestly. He showed me what I'd been missing in fatherly love, and I've never been so grateful for anyone. About 6 months after it all, I moved away from the East Coast and settled out in California, needing to get away from it all. A little less than a year after I moved, I got call from an area, code from back home, which I rarely got anymore. I picked up and it was my stepbrother, whom I promptly hung up on. He called me back and I ignored it, but it stuck with me all day. I decided that if he called back again, I'd pick up, which he did later that night. It was awkward at best. He told me my fiancée was really torn up for a long time. It took her nearly a year to even start looking again for a significant other. I hadn't at all since it ended. A few months into her doing so, my stepdad encouraged him to ask her on a date, which he did. Things went okay for the first couple outings, but never really clicked apparently. He told my stepdad about that, and the idiot told him, "I didn't get rid of Op for nothing. She's a great girl. You need to figure it out with her." I almost collapsed, and it was quickly replaced with anger. Apparently, he had gotten a girl, I still don't know who, to pose as someone I had an affair with and forged some message screenshots to have her sent to my fiancé. He told me he'd said it to him about a month ago, and he didn't know what to do. Apparently it bothered him enough that he couldn't just sit on the info anymore, so he told me and said he was going to tell my mom and fiancé the next day. He called me first as a courtesy, so he knew what to say to them regarding me. I think my disabled brother tried to unalive my mom tonight. My mother called me from the ER today with very bad bruising all over her body and broken ribs. I book her an Uber back to my brother's house immediately as she was cleared by the doctors. I text my cousin, who my mother is close with, to come over to mine. She comes over, and as she does, I'm simultaneously on the phone with my brother trying to ask him what happened to Mom. He starts sending me photos of him wounding his wrists. He is telling me he is taking his life and unaliving our mom because it's her fault he was born autistic. I'm begging him in tears to not do this via speakerphone as he sends more. I hear him go into a full-on psychological SSI-esque breakdown. I'm hearing and seeing every moment of it. Dots are connecting, as she said doctors asked about her bruises and ribs earlier, and they kept reiterating and repeating if she was sure what had happened, and what hurts, and why. All the while my brother is screaming and crying uncontrollably. I'm starting to realize this may be an all-out, unreal, terrifying, dangerous situation. I'm fumbling with my cousin's phone to contact the police and crisis hotline 2 hours away. 3 different dispatchers tell me they can't patch me through that far. I also am texting my cousin, who is there at the house with my brother. I'm telling her what he's doing and saying behind his barricaded closed door, all while keeping my SSI-driven brother on the line, trying to prevent him from hurting Mom. He continues to cry that he's going to jail. I keep asking why and reassuring him that he can go to a hospital and get help and get better, and that he promised me he wouldn't do this no matter how hard life got. We lost our dad, who was an abusive addict, together, and he promised me to not lose it again, ever, and always be here. I think my disabled brother tried to unalive my mom tonight. I said he promised me. He continues to hurt himself and show me every second. It's extremely hard to watch, and as someone who has recovered from self-hurting, it's extremely nauseating to see. Too many boundary-crossing pics. He wounded his own pee-pee and showed me. I'm physically feeling sick at this point. He tells me, I don't want to be here and I'm taking her with me. And at this point I realize I could potentially wake up without a brother, mom, or anyone. I hear the cops come in. He immediately states, I'm completely cooperative, and he never has the chance to hang up on me. My idiot self stays on the phone listening to him be evaluated and detained for over 45 minutes, before I hang up and realize I'm possibly in shock and disassociating. The way he went from wailing he was going to end his life, to totally cordial to the cops in no time at all is effing disturbing. I still can't get past it. He is on a mandatory 72-hour psych hold, and my cousin stayed with my mom for the night. I now know that he threw her around like a rag doll. A 32-year-old man flung his 70-year-old post-stroke mother around her house like a toy. He put her in a submission hold. He broke her cane, held her down so hard on her bed he broke a rib. He repeatedly asked her if she was ready to die. He got up and grabbed a knife from the kitchen. He plunged it into the bed near her head repeatedly. She said she just prayed. He taunted her, and every time she got up he knocked her back down. This went on for 2 days. Then he proceeded to try to take his own life and show me, his twin sister, every step of the way. He was determined to make me watch him end himself, even though I was far away. My 21-year-old brother unalived himself today. I've been through some poop. Life can be a real mother effer sometimes, and it doesn't give a dang about your plans or aspirations. You're just going along, minding your own goddamn business, and then bam, something effing blindsides you and knocks you off your feet. But let me tell you, nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the gut-wrenching pain of losing a loved one to unaliving. It's like being punched in the chest repeatedly, your heart shattering into a million effing pieces. That sense of emptiness that settles in your soul, it's suffocating, like drowning in an ocean of sorrow. My older brother was just 21 when he decided to end his own life. 21 years of laughter, fights, and shared memories, all extinguished in a single selfish act. The grief that tore through our family was indescribably. It was like a tsunami of pain, annihilating everything in its path. You know, my brother was a goddamn force of nature. He was the life of the party, always cracking jokes and making everyone around him laugh until their stomachs hurt. We were tight, inseparable. We had our fair share of adventures, from sneaking out past curfew to causing chaos during family reunions. But beneath that larger-than-life personality, there was a darkness lurking within him. Mental demons that he battled silently, masking them with smiles and laughter. None of us had a effing clue. We were blindsided, left to pick up the shattered remnants of his broken soul. I remember the days that followed his death, like a blur of tears and unanswered questions. Rumors began to circulate, secrets revealed. We discovered that he had been struggling with depression, drowning in a sea of despair without any lifelines to cling to. It effing crushed us to learn that he had been silently fighting his own battles while we were oblivious, going about our own mundane lives. My 21-year-old brother unalived himself today. You see, that's the thing about mental illness. It's often invisible. It hides in the shadows, behind the smiles and the laughter. We may think we know someone, but we never truly comprehend the depth of their pain until it's too late. In the aftermath of my brother's death, our family underwent a profound transformation. We vowed to break the stigma surrounding mental health, to raise awareness, and encourage open conversations. We attended support groups, donated to mental health organizations, and shared our story with others who were suffering. But life has a sick way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. Just when we thought we were on the road to healing, poop went haywire. Our family business, a successful bed company that my brother had poured his heart and soul into, was attacked by a rival corporation. Lawsuit, defamation, the whole effing ordeal. It was like adding salt to an open wound. We fought tooth and nail to save what my brother had built, but the world can be a merciless female. Our resources dwindled, debts piled up, and the stress started taking its toll. It felt like we were drowning all over again, gasping for air, searching for a lifeline. We held on to hope, to faith, to the memory of my brother. We refused to give up, to let his death be in vain. But as the days passed, as the pressure mounted, we started to realize that this was a battle we might not be able to win. We were on the brink of defeat, of surrendering to the darkness, when suddenly, a light shone in the darkness, a ray of hope, a sign of deliverance. We were saved by the unlikeliest of heroes. A mysterious benefactor had stepped in to save the day, to save our business and our legacy. We were stunned, speechless. I slept with another man again, and I don't know how to tell my husband. My husband Adam and I have been together for 12 years. He's been my first true love, my first boyfriend, and the first one I ever had intimacy with. The fact that he's 5 years older than me and that he had a bit of dating and adult experiences before made him decide we should expand our intimacy life a bit. We visited a intimacy cinema a few years back that allowed public intimacy. There, we met Zach. Zach's been pretty persistent and exchanged numbers with me after Adam pushed me too. We didn't do anything really back then, as, while I could bring myself over to let people watch, I couldn't actually do something with someone else. This lasted for a few years, in which I successfully convinced Adam to let these delicate matters stay between the two of us, but it occasionally resurfaced after he voiced concern that, since I don't know anyone besides him, might cheat like his exes. As this started to become a center topic, I agreed to meet Zach 3 times in a single year, a couple years after I originally met him. It was mixed feelings. Some things I learned about my own body I didn't know before. It felt good to be completely accepted as well, since I have low self-esteem. He was never shy to voice how attractive I am and how he worships me, things I hardly heard from Adam since he isn't really the vocal type. But other than a few sweet words and skilled fingers, Zach is disgusting. I hate his smell, his taste. I don't find his sounds or his looks appealing. The very first time I gave him neck, his pee-pee had cheese, and I actually threw up when it was done. I told Adam that I don't want to do this anymore. He accepted. Fast forward to now. While I was meeting with Zach, Adam found that he's got a thing for other people wanting me, even if it went as far as him sharing me. I slept with another man again, and I don't know how to tell my husband. He's been on it again for the past year about how I'm boring for wanting to keep intimacy just between us, and how the mere thought of another guy craving me makes him hotter than a furnace. I think he loves the thought that someone desires what he has. Velp. It got to the point again I let my love for him get the better of me. It's been too long, and I thought Zach might be less disgusting. I've been pretty demanding as well these couple days, until Adam openly told me that he can't keep up with my needs, and perhaps Zach would be a good idea. It happened. I met him a couple nights back. Once I returned, Adam was all over me, and he keeps talking about how glad he is that I decided to do this again. He also shuts down any attempt of me telling him how I feel about it by rolling his eyes or sighing whenever it's the slightest hint of, it was a mistake. While we usually are able to discuss everything, Zach was a terrible experience, and I am still hurting down there. He got into substance abuse, something I didn't know beforehand. He couldn't get a stiffy because of this, and he resented other means and wasn't exactly willing to let me go. I couldn't get my mind off the situation I was in, and while I fully well am aware of the fact that I initiated, I felt like the stupid lamb walking into the wolf's den. His smell is covering me no matter how many times I shower. The pain won't ease. Whenever I have a silent moment for myself, I see his face and hear his fake sounds to get me in the mood, and I feel trapped again. He never resorted to violence or threatened me, so I don't even know why the heck I feel this way. Am I the a-hole for not waking up early and helping my mother-in-law with chores? I, F25, has been married for a year now. It is customary in our culture that women stay with their in-laws after marriage. I didn't subscribe to this and told my husband, then boyfriend, before marriage itself, that I want to live separately. He agreed, since he himself wanted to live away from parents and build his own life. But as a compromise, we would still visit them and stay at their place every couple of months. It is again customary. Dill helps mother-in-law with household tasks, the stench of patriarchy. In our house, that is mine and husband's, We are equals. We do chores together. In in-laws' place, it's always his mom who does majority of chores. She was a psalm too. When I am visiting, I am expected to help her with the chores. Not my husband, just me. I just rope him in as well. The main issue is that everyone there wakes up at 5:36 a.m. That's way too early for me even on days when I have work. Since we go there on my off days, I just want to sleep in. At least till 8 to 9 a.m. Initially they didn't say much about this. Just a bit of snide comments that I let go. Use my own battles and all. But today morning, my mother-in-law made a big show of how I never help her with chores. Let me clarify. She wakes at 6 a.m. and finishes most tasks by 9 a.m. By the time I am awake, it's all done. I help prep, but that doesn't count to her. The fact I don't slave away in kitchen is making her mad. When she went on a whole woe on me act, my husband, who normally supports me, also got mad at me. He asked why I couldn't wake up few days out of a month earlier than I want to and help his mom. When I said he can help his mom himself since he wakes up anyway, he said that's not the point. He said he doesn't ask much of me, and this is least I can do. Respect his parents when we are staying under their roof. I got mad and told him, I don't want to stay under their roof, and neither do I have to. With that, I just packed my bags and left that place. Am I the a-hole for not waking up early and helping my mother-in-law with chores? Now my parents and husband are blasting my phone for overreacting. Am I the a-hole? 'Cause I see a lot of comments asking me to help my mother-in-law. No one has anywhere to be. It's literally the weekend. There's no requirement for things to be done by that time, other than the fact it is how we do here. And I help her meal prep, cut veggies and everything the night before. I clean the house too, roping in my husband as well, though we literally visit for 2 days. Also to people who commented I shouldn't go then, my initial agreement, before marriage with them and my husband was that I wouldn't go. I work full-time in a different city. I want to relax on weekends. They kept calling, begging and guilt-tripping. I finally agreed to visit, as in, 1 weekend a month. We go there Friday after office and return Sunday night. That's literally the entire weekend and duration of stay. If I wasn't there, I would be sleeping until 12 noon of after. Husband knows this well. As I respect his home, I am getting at 8-9. It feels like yet another working day to me. Getting at 6 a.m. is like overtime on already hectic 12-day week. To all who are guessing, yes, I am Indian. From Kerala, to be precise. And yeah, I know many other cultures have this in common. Reading each of your stories makes me sadder and braver at the same time. To everyone who is saying you know what you married into, now do as they want. A bit of backstory. I am from the same culture they are. I grew up seeing my mom work harder hours than my dad, get home later and using crowded public transport while my dad used own vehicle, and then make tea for him. It sounds very simple. A tea, right? It's not. It's coming on struggling in public transport, and as soon as you reach having to go, make tea for a man who has reached home from his job 10 minutes away in own vehicle. Make him tea and dinner while he watched TV. I know the fight she fought and fate she accepted. I know even after 30 years of marriage she is upset. I called out my innocent husband on his baby behavior. He throws tantrums and hits people when they don't agree with him. Poor baby. I, 29 Canadian, met my, now, husband, 29, Egyptian Canadian, in early 2021 via a dating app. But we had mutual friends already, same university. I quickly fell for him and after a year we got engaged. 2 months later, we had our Kapatub Nikah Islamic ceremony. It was very small, immediate family only. Our wedding reception is in 1 week, 4.5 months after the Kapatub. There is obviously a fair amount of stress, as we're stretched pretty thin, to make the wedding work shortly after purchasing our first home. My husband is in a new job, and I'm in a famously high-stress job. I definitely acknowledge I have not been my best self lately, trying to make ends meet and get myself through each day, frankly. On to the red flag. My husband is a charismatic, funny guy. He's loud, as am I. His personality has been something I've loved about him since I met him. But lately there's less humor and more commentary on world politics, sometimes right-wing conspiracy, or what I would call conspiracy, type stuff. It's preachy. When I engage, it quickly becomes a fight, seemingly regardless of my stance. When I take issue with his tone and personal attacks, I get yelled at or told I'm purposefully vilifying him. He's starting to shout at me more often. Today it was in front of his whole family. It was humiliating. I cried. It was over me pushing back when his family told me they had already done the seating chart for their guests, despite not having the entire guest list. I called out my innocent husband on his baby behavior. I did not think I was being rude, but I just explained that I needed to work off the draft I had because I knew it had all guests on it. I was reassuring her she could rearrange tables if I got stuff wrong. My husband interjected himself from the next room, shouting at me for saying his mom didn't know everyone that was coming. Then he shouted that he wasn't shouting. We were shouting. I shouldn't have. But I called him out on his immaturity. I called him out for yelling in front of our nephews, 971, who were there. I told him to stay out of it if he was going to yell. We finished the seating chart, and I left to stay with my parents. We are visiting from out of town. It's been 5 hours since the incident, and I haven't heard from my husband. When I left, I gave everyone a quick hug goodbye, including my husband. He didn't walk me to my car. He's been shouting at me more at home, too. I avoid certain topics altogether. It got physical once, and he put his hand on my throat. He apologized profusely for this and blamed it on frustration at my poor memory during an argument we were having. Sometimes he pushes me, which I find super embarrassing in public. He shoves me out of the way if I go to pay at the store, despite us often alternating who pays. I have verbalized that my parents don't treat each other that way. I have told him I don't want to be treated that way. I have explicitly said, don't shout at me, don't push me, threatened to involve his older brothers. I'm sure I'm extra upset right now for a handful of reasons: wedding stress, menses not praying, work stress, but I'm starting to worry that I'm being willfully blind here. I think my mom slept with my high school boyfriend. My boyfriend and I started dating when I was 14 and he was 17. We dated for like 3 months in high school and broke up. He then dated one of my best friends and told me he'd break up with her if I date him again, so being young and naive, I did. So we dated for like another year. I had to move across the country with my family. This time it was a super messy breakup. We were in the middle of fighting over text, and he messaged saying, "You know what? I slept with your mom," and sent a picture as proof. I briefly looked at the picture, enough to be like, "Yep, that looks like my mom," and then deleted it and blocked him. I didn't want to believe it, so I just didn't think about it. So I just locked that away for about 10 years. I'm now married to the love of my life and have 2 young kids. We live far from my mom, and she came to visit and drove here. We only see her once a year. While she was here, she kept lying about small things, just small little lies here and there, but it bothered me. After she left, it boiled over, and I called her out and told her I don't appreciate being lied to, especially about dumb things that don't matter. It escalated, and I hung up on her. She then makes a group chat with me and my husband and sends another message about how she didn't lie, but that she has to lie because she knows how I'll act weird if she does not make up these little lies. I messaged back, "Okay, liar." She then sends a text about something I said 2 years ago when I was complaining about my husband's family to her. This made me see red, because I feel like that's why she made a group chat with me and my husband, so she could send that to him. I don't know if it was to hurt me by hurting him, to make him mad at me so I'm fighting a war on 2 fronts, or to get my husband on her side of the argument. I think my mom slept with my high school boyfriend. Either way, I lost it. I told her I know she slept with my high school boyfriend. She proceeds to keep texting me about how she's an adult and I'm not her mom, and it doesn't matter why she lies to me or what she's doing. She ignores the thing about sleeping with my ex. So I send it again, like 2 more times, before she's finally like, "Stop sending that crap to my phone," and then tells me I'm crazy and need medication. So since then, I've been no contact with her. I do believe she slept with my ex, but also I'm worried about if he was lying and said that to ruin our relationship. It's something I've ignored for 10 years, but now that I've said it aloud, so many things make sense. When we first dated, she went through my phone and read my messages with him to my aunt, and they made fun of me at Thanksgiving. Back when I was still dating him, but after we moved across the country, she went through my phone and read our dirty texts aloud at the dinner table. And I always wondered why she did that. She has always been weird with my exes. Every guy I've dated, she keeps them friended on Snapchat and messages them after we break up and updates me on what they're up to. My ex was crazy. He dated my best friend to get back at me so I 100% could see him sleeping with my mom just so he could use it as ammo against me later. My mom is a narcissist. My older brother is no contact with her and has been for 3 years now. So here's my issue. Where do I go from here? I know she's going to try to reach out and deny it, but she lies about everything, so I know I won't believe her. I really don't know how she could prove her innocence to me. Even if my ex reached out and told me he was lying and made it up, I would just think she messaged him and paid him off.